Hey guys, how's it going? Today I want to take a look at how OpenAI played Dota and how the team behind OpenAI Dota structured the learning process, and more specifically, how did they reward their model and what we can learn from it. But before we get to the OpenAI stuff, we should take a look at, in general, what is statistics in Dota, I guess you can say it. Um, put it like that. Uh, One thing I find interesting is that in Dota you kind of have this combination of stats, and then you have practical experience, so some kind of practice. And there's an interplay between these two. If you just practice, then you definitely kind of cut yourself short and you only get a part of the picture of how Dota works. If you only have stats and you don't play Dota, then again, it's gonna be very limited what you understand about the current patch, about the current meta. Like your ability is gonna be limited. Uh, this is kind of the reason that most teams nowadays, like most big teams, have a structure where they have players. So they have the players, they have like a coach. It's hard to imagine a team without a coach. I remember when coaches were kind of funny that if your team had a coach, especially if you were like a tier 2, tier 3 team, it it was pretentious. It was kind of low skill to have a coach, as funny as it sounds. And then big teams started getting coaches, and it kind of went into tier 2, tier 3 scene. But at some point, it was like, kind of like having a masseuse. If you found out some team today, like tier 3 team has a masseuse, and they're like, yeah, it just seems pretentious. So right now the structure is players, there's a coach, and usually there's like an analyst who kind of looks at the stats and feeds that into the team. As far as I know, all major teams have this type of structure, and tier two, tier three teams also have something like this going on. So the players themselves, they don't have to do the analytics. They don't really have to do the coaching stuff. They just have to play. And you have this more complex structure of essentially, kind of navigating both domains, the domain of practice and domain of stats. Uh, this is kind of very basic. I don't think there's anything new there. The interesting part for me is that in reality, I think that the communication, this layer of communicating between, let's say, it's stats and practice, those are the two domains. This layer of communication between these two is where the most advantage can be gained today, because stats, obviously, there are good analysts, and there are people who know how to look at the stats. There are platforms that you can use, to get the stats. There's also quite a lot of practice. People know how to play a lot of games, how to scream, etc. So, in some sense, these two like domains have been developed. It is this middle layer that is like the communication. How do you relate one to the other? That is sort of underdeveloped from my perspective. Uh, And the reason for that is that I can see how some teams, they rely too heavily on stats, or like not teams, more like some minds, people. They rely quite heavily on stats. They really believe in that, like, okay, this here has 60% win rate in like pubs, or like this item is like, you know, every time you buy it, your win rate is, doubles. If you buy it before like 15 minutes, then the gradient of that item is really good, and that's et cetera, et cetera. And they really believe this is how you should play. And then there are people who are just, okay, I played, 50 pubs on some hero like Klings. It's just pick it. It's like, I don't care what the stats say. I know what it is. So there's like this very extremist views, I would say, in terms of like both polarities. Uh, and it makes sense that it would be like that because combining the two is actually hard. And I think that the concept that really makes it much easier to understand why uh, taking the extreme view is probably bad in Dota is because Dota is fundamentally not a statistical game. It is not a long-term game, despite what it might feel at first. If we take pubs are mostly a statistical game because there's your win rate, and then how much MMR you gain, essentially based on that win rate, and that is what you do. So if you have positive win rate and you gain enough MMR, you're just gonna climb. That's it. There's nothing else to it. If you understand the strategy that gives you higher than 50% win rate, you will climb. There's no way to stop it. There's no way to do anything about it. So in that sense, there is long term. But then you have, really smart players like Yatoro, who can look at the game, decide, okay, this hero, like as far as I remember, I might be mixing it up, but I think about a year ago he took a break, and then I think he played Drow Ranger when nobody really was playing it, and he just picked Drow Ranger, and he had like, some crazy win rate, like 80% plus or something, and he just climbed at an insane rate. Now, this wasn't because Drow Ranger was a broken hero. It's just that in his hands, he kind of figured out how it worked. And honestly, this example could be anything. It doesn't have to be a real example, but there are players who understand Dota on a level where they can just simply abuse something that isn't inherently strong. It's just that they kind of know how to combine um, the the hero, let's say, and the point in time, a point in time of, like, let's say this was patch like 738 or something, and then the next patch is going to be 739. At this point in time between patches, they know how to abuse this hero before everybody figured out what to do with it. And by doing that, they're not playing the long-term game. The long-term game might be that the Drow, in my example, starts here at 80% win rate in like 20 games that Yatoro played, and he gained a lot of MMR because of this. And then win rate starts to go down as more people play it, and at like 100 games the win rate is going to be 60%, and then at like 200 games the win rate is going to be like 52%. So it's still a decent hero, but realistically it's just not as strong as initially thought. But Yatoro knew the time and place to abuse it, so he gained a lot of war. uh, that is an example of not playing the statistical game, but just rather playing the I know what's happening. And I would categorize that sort of approach as kind of bluffs. And I think the existence of bluffs in Dota uh, is what makes it so that statistical long term analysis isn't actually 100% viable, and it interacts really well with the tournament structure, because in the tournament structure you really don't have to play like 1,000 games. You have a tournament, let's say a playoff, where there are 4 matches in the winner bracket, and then my writing is a bit crooked, and then you have so these teams collide, there's like these teams, and then there's this is winner bracket. To get to the winner bracket, which guarantees you third place, you only have to win one best of three, second best of three. So at most, you're gonna play 6 games. Any analyst is gonna tell you that 6 games is not close enough for sample size. You cannot take 6 games and have like some really significant statistical analysis done on heroes picked, etc. What you will usually see is that this player played like 3 different heroes, that this player played 4 different heroes, this player played 2 different heroes, and so on. So in that sense, to get third place at the tournament, you really only need to prepare 6 strats. They don't even have to be good strats. They can be bad strats that have no real value outside of this specific matchup against this specific team. And this is what I mean by bluffs, that you can figure out a strategy that isn't good, but in this one singular best of 3, it's gonna be good enough that the opponents don't know exactly what to do, and that means you get to the winner bracket finals, and then it's third place. guaranteed. Uh, so in that sense, like statistical analysis is a little bit not pointless, but it cannot guarantee you that this will work. At the same time, like playing, 100 pubs on Klings is just might be just meaningless because in this first best of three, this is what you've prepared, and they kind of saw you in pubs and they just ban Klings, like Klings banned. That's it. All of your practice is just gone. That's it. You're done. Uh, so navigating this structure of like tournament Dota and making it work is actually the interesting aspect of drafting and Dota in general, that it you have to do both. You have to understand what is strong, you have to practice, but then you have to apply it in very limited scenarios. I mean, if the tournament structure was that we play this bracket and then we replay this bracket and then we replay this bracket and do this 10 times, then of course, we would have a very different approach. Uh, I hope, it kind of makes sense what I mean by bluffs. And now let's take a look at an actual example of this, or it's not exactly an example of this specific idea. It's just something that could be kind of looked at as an example. What I mean by that, this is Parivision's, what do you call it? This is Parivision's last qualifier that they played. This was for Blast, I believe, and you can see an interesting kind of thing happening here. So they're playing against Chikibriki, and they're playing with Wisp, a hero that's not very popular right now in terms of like competitive play. Teams are not prioritizing and picking it, banning it, all that. So it's interesting to see. And Parivision are not really known for their Wisp. If you're wondering, I'm not going to go into the games, but it was 9 class who was playing it, position 4. They won first game. There's like a cool, like, he just AFK farmed the mech and then joined the team. So it's a little bit different gameplay than you usually see from Wisp. And then the second game, they first pick it, 8th pick. Cheeky Breaky are trying to counter it with Apparition, Axe together, trying to like, okay, we're just gonna control him. It doesn't work. And okay, you could say that Cheeky Breaky are, lesser team. Of course, this is gonna work. It doesn't matter that they pick Wisp. And then they play Navi in the finals for the slot at the tournament, and Navi ban Wisp in the first phase. I mean, it's not random that they ban it. They would not be banning it against other teams. It's not a normal ban. It hasn't become a normal ban afterwards. So it kind of suggests that at least statistically, Wisp position 4 is not considered strong in the meta. And how does this bluff mentality apply to this? Parivision might think that Wisp is strong, but it's not necessary that it is so strong you can pick it every game. However, Navi just don't have the time to find out. They don't want to play the finals and find out in the finals that Wisp is really strong, or find out that actually it's not strong. Let Parivision play it, and then they are gambling because they don't really know how strong it is. In fact, maybe Wisp is not strong at all, and it only worked against Cheeky Breaky because they Parivision are just better. So by doing this, by first picking Wisp here, 8th pick, they might be just buying themselves an extra, ban so that they can get Slark, for example. And this is the kind of bluff mentality that you can kind of incorporate into drafting because there's just not enough time to really figure things out. What might be happening is that Wisp is strong until you understand how he jungles, how he farms the jungle, and then you can pressure the offlaner and not plan exactly to, for example, counter Wisp, but plan to counter the offlaner because he's kind of solo while Wisp is jungling, and then it just turns out that it's too difficult to play the game if the enemy team knows what exactly you want to do. Maybe there's like some kind of bounty hunter you can pick and just follow Wisp in the jungle or something like that. I'm not saying it's a weak strategy. I don't know if Wisp 4 is very strong or very weak because I just don't have the information. It looked good, but hard to say. So this is a kind of bluff you can do, and there's not really that much Navi can do against it. They decide to ban it, and ultimately they kind of, I guess, figure out the bans and win uh, the the qualifier. I don't really want to go into like the specifics of those matches. If you're interested, people you can kind of look at it afterwards. All right, this is the main thing that I want to talk about in the video. This is a paper. It's from 2019. It's after OpenAI played against OG, so it's like I guess once the project was kind of over, it kind of is putting it all together. I'm not sure if there's any documentation that followed this. I'm not sure, but it's not really that important. I think if you're interested in that sort of thing, it's a good idea to go and read through this. You don't have to understand everything. It in terms of like if you're not interested in AI and like reinforcement learning, etc. It's not really about that. If you're interested in Dota, you will see the things that kind of matter to you as a Dota player. But the thing that interested me the most is um, I don't remember which section it was. Um, Let me check. Right. Well, we can start with. I guess we can start with scripted actions. Uh, so when you're thinking about AI, you sort of nowadays, the AI is viewed as a lot of slop, a lot of just generally low quality material that it provides to you, and you kind of have to figure it out, like work more on it. And I think like you can actually get really good results. At least personally, for some smaller things that I've been doing, I used AI and it works well if you kind of work with it. So it's definitely a really good tool. But generally, you don't think that AI is strong. At the time when this was developed, like the Dota 2 bot by OpenAI was really, really strong. It was really good. It was not easy to play against, and it had like some really good Dota. But the interesting part is that there were scripted actions built into the bot, so um, it wasn't all just AI learning how to do it. And here are the interesting things that were scripted into it. So people came in and said the ability builds are going to be pre-built. So we're going to tell the bot what it's going to skill at what level, etc. The item purchases were pre-built. Uh, Courier control, etc. Like we don't really care that much about that. But what it says is that, for example, you want to learn a new hero, uh, and you want to figure something out. To use this OpenAI approach, what you really do is just you go, to Dota 2 Pro Tracker and just look at what people are buying on the hero. Let's say you want to learn how to play, Axe. You just go and check what people are doing, and you just copy that. If it was good enough for this project, OpenAI project, it's probably good enough for you. And you copy it not because you're lazy, but because it just saves you a lot of time. You can focus on more important things right now, and it kind of is a normal thing to do. Uh, to just use the knowledge that people have. So that's kind of like the first thing you can take from OpenAI. Again, nothing totally new in the space of learning how to play Dota. It's well known that you can go and copy builds, etc. But if you understand that you're not exactly copying the build because that's just a standard, you're copying it to save yourself some time, and then you can manipulate the build once you kind of get the idea of what the hero does and so on. But so that you don't fail at learning right away by buying wrong items, doing wrong things. Because sometimes you see that with people, they want to learn a hero, but they try to do everything from scratch. They like try to figure everything out from the very beginning, and it can be done. It just takes much longer, and perhaps it's a better idea to start with a pre-built kind of idea of how you're gonna play, and then once you're comfortable with that, expand it and experiment yourself. A more interesting thing with OpenAI is um, these reward weights. So when this team was trained, like the OpenAI 5 team was trained, of course, they need to understand what they're doing. And the agent's ultimate goal was to win the game. And you could just set that, like, go destroy the throne, and that's it. And then let the bots, just run the simulation nonstop until they figure it out. But as you can imagine, it can take a very long time uh, because there's so many options, there are so many ways you can play the game, so many moves, so many wrong moves, etc. And to navigate that, reinforcement learning in general, as I understand, uses reward weights, which is a very natural thing. Kind of, it's easily understandable by humans that this is how you train. You set some kind of goal, and then you reward for that goal. It's very built into the nature. This is how you kind of train dogs, etc. So we kind of understand this very well. The interesting part is not just the rewards them, not just the fact that you have rewards. It's the type of rewards, and this is what I wanted to focus on. Okay, first of all, the win. So the reward for win is 5, but it's a team reward, as it says, and based on like the factor that they would set, they called it team spirit. But generally you can think of it as that it's a team goal. It's a team reward. So this is granted to every single player if the factor is set to 1. If the factor is set to less, then you get less than that. But generally, this is everybody, gets this. So it's a bit different than when somebody gets personal reward. But we can definitely understand, like, winning is gonna give you a reward. So yeah, makes sense. Like, you get the Mamara, you want the Mamar, so this is a good reward for you. Nothing new there. Uh, let's look at the barracks and buildings first. I think there's some ancient HP change. Yeah. So the way it was set up for buildings in terms of rewards with OpenAI is very interesting, and I think once you kind of use it in your own kind of thinking, you will understand why they do this. So for buildings, 2/3 of the reward is earned linearly as the building loses health, and 1/3 is earned as a lump sum when it dies. So this reward that the team gets, this 6 for barracks, which is more than winning the game, which is also interesting, but we're not gonna really focus on that. This is not what you get for killing the building. It doesn't go from 0 to 6 instantly. It goes from 0 to like 0.1 when you do damage to the building. So you're not getting rewarded for killing the building as much as you're getting rewarded for doing damage to it. And if you played enough Dota, like, let's say these are the two barracks, and your team is attacking, and then somebody just dives past them and tries to chase them and goes into the fountain and dies. Part of the reason is because this person doesn't experience hitting the building as rewarding. This is what OpenAI kind of did, like the team behind it did, and they did it, I assume, together with like pros, Dota 2 pros, who knew kind of what rewards to set. So in some sense, when you're hitting the building, when you're hitting the tower and it loses health, of course you don't exactly gain anything from it in terms of gold, in terms of just if you hit the tower a couple of times, your game is not gonna get better as it is. Like, you're not gonna buy an item because of it, because the tower didn't die, you didn't get the gold. But the fact that it like moves the game forward is rewarding. So it's kind of an interesting thing to think about that this was played back when shrines were existed. Hitting the buildings is important. It should be thought of as a proper thing to do, not just killing the building, but hitting it as well. Uh, Another thing to look at is hero kills. Again, killing a hero obviously gives you gold, etc. And in Astini videos, he kind of compares killing heroes to dopamine. I'm not gonna. Okay, I'm gonna write the whole word. The dopamine. Uh, what do I? Hmm, sorry, it kind of bugged out. Uh, Compares to dopamine and OpenAI kind of agree. And the reason for it is when killing a hero, for killing an enemy hero, the golden experience reward is very high. So this reduces the total reward for killing enemies. You can see that it's a negative value. So the reward is negative for killing a hero, which is at first weird. Why do you essentially lose points for killing a hero? But it's very simple. Killing the hero in itself, getting your KDA from 0 to 1, like wow, I got the kill, and maybe somebody got an assist. Oh, very nice. It doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't do anything. You kill a hero because the hero dies and cannot farm, and you get gold and XP. And gold and XP gain already has a reward. So when you kill a hero, the act of killing takes a little bit of this reward away. And you might think, okay, why not just keep it at 0? But if you think about it, to kill a hero, you usually have to use, mana. You usually have to use resources. Uh, I mean, resources, not just like mana, but also cooldowns. You have to break your position and you have to give up doing something else. So killing a hero, it takes something away from you. You do trade something to gain that gold and experience. So in that sense, it's very interesting to think how would you play if every time you kill a hero, you do this re-evaluation. Okay, is this enough? Should I did I spend too much? Should I go back? And once you start thinking like that, you can notice that yeah, it actually makes the game much easier. I no longer chase the kill. I kind of stay in this framework of trading. What do I trade to get um, this golden experience? So this definitely is logical, and thinking about this in terms of rewards, I think makes it easier to follow good patterns. Okay, another very interesting thing here, and by the way, it's kind of the same for last hit. It is, interesting in the sense that just killing, getting the last hit isn't exactly valuable. The value is in gold and XP. So it's the same thing. So that people don't kind of, or at least bots don't just go and try to get like as many last hits as they can, as fast as they can. They have to keep thinking about this. Okay, another very interesting thing is that this gold spent. Uh, Without using courier here, but I think in general, just the idea of spending gold should be rewarded because quite often you see teams, even high tier teams, they go and fight when, like somebody has 3,000 gold and and they're saving up for an item. Maybe they're uncertain what item they should use. And logically, if you do the math and the other team spent all their gold and you didn't spend all your gold, then your gold is just sitting there. It's again not very useful. Gold is not useful until you spend it. Of course, you can save by buyback, etc. But again, it's not useful because you have it. It's useful because you buy back, etc. So this gold spent, I think, is also an interesting thing to think about. And it kind of ties into, what do you spend your gold on? Is it a full item or is it like half an item and then another half an item and you need like something is missing still? So again, this reward is also kind of very natural. You can see it in your games, you can feel it, but having the precise understanding that this is actually valuable, I think helps um, kind of do the right thing more often. Okay, another interesting thing here is that uh, basically with rewards, I think if you go through the paper and just look at this yourself, kind of look at the values here, like how much you get for what, it's interesting just to think about. Uh, Another very interesting thing here is game time waiting. So what it means is that as game progresses, values sort of should change because killing a creep, you know, during the first wave is not the same as killing the creep at minute 60. It just has different impact on the game. So they have a formula that kind of adjusts rewards based on how much time has passed. And this is very relevant because it kind of, as they explain in this paragraph, if this wasn't there, then late game would just produce so much, the rewards for late game would just be obscene compared to the early game, and you just wouldn't care about the early game. And this kind of explains the turbo mode, where the early game is sort of like really fast, and then you get to the good part for some people, where you have items and you can play, etc. Which there's nothing wrong with it, but you can see how sometimes not thinking in these terms can uh, really, how to put it, um, change the way you see the impact of early game. Like just not care too much about the early game. But then on the other hand, if this formula is not correct, if this formula is overtuned in a sense like you you think that the early game is just way too valuable, and then the late game is, just not very important, then it will also kind of break the game for you. So this formula that you use in your mind to navigate the kind of the changes in reward systems as the game progresses is kind of important. And I think this formula that they used might have been appropriate for their use case, but as patches change, as your draft changes, your hero changes, the item you buy changes, maybe even the play style of the team you're playing against changes, this formula needs adjustment. I think one good example is there's this team right now, Pipsqueak. I don't know if they're still playing with Copy, but if you look at how Copy plays mid, he tends to, or at least the games I watched, they tended to try to get the mid matchups that are really favorable. So for him, like the early game is quite important, and that could be a team where this formula, how you evaluate early game, late game, reward kind of weights, could be something that just be different than when you play other teams. So against them, you kind of prioritize early game in a different way than in some other games. Okay, I think this is for the most part it. There's obviously way more to this than I can describe in like even an hour long video. And it's best to just go through this yourself if you're interested. Find, maybe you'll see things that I didn't discuss, so maybe you'll kind of get different understanding of this. Oh yeah, one thing I didn't mention is this lane assignment. I kind of really wanted to talk about it. This is a very complicated topic, but in general, as you can see, per second in wrong lane. This is a very interesting thing because what it suggests is that just the place where you're at, not exactly what you're doing, what the actions, but where you're on the map. If you're here or if you're here, uh, you can be losing the reward or potentially maybe gaining the reward. Maybe you're not doing anything, but it's a really good place to be in. For example, breaking a smoke or countering gank, or maybe uh, you know blocking a camp, even maybe something like that in the early game, just where you're standing. So this lane assignment where you're also generates the reward. And again, it's kind of logically it makes sense. Naturally, people do this. Uh, but the thing I like about this is that if you learn how to play the map so that you force the enemy to go into territories where this is not good for them, that is already a win. Yeah, let's say you force a carry into like farming these two camps somewhere, enemy carry. But if you do it properly, yes, he's farming, he's getting items, but essentially he's losing because that's not where he wants to be. It's not what he wants to be doing. So again, this is a very interesting way to think about Dota. I think this, like, looking at this like reward charts, just allows you to transfer like intuitional thinking, where you kind of have this intuition of how to play, into more structured, developed way of thinking about it. And it will definitely help with analyzing like statistical information, and just this idea of bringing the two together, the playing part and the statistical part. I think this is what really allows you to kind of uh, create this synergy between the two. Right. Well, this was how to play like OpenAI. There's more to it. I hope you found this interesting, and good games, everybody. Bye.